In the year 2036, a cataclysmic collision occurred between Earth and another dimension, unleashing monstrous creatures that soared and ravaged the world. However, amidst the chaos, humanity was unexpectedly gifted with the ability to level up and evolve into diverse talents and classes. After a long and grueling war, human resilience and ingenuity eventually won out, leading to the reconstruction of the world's shattered order. It is within this new world that our protagonist, Henry, finds himself stuck at level 3, unable to advance despite his unwavering determination. Yet, fate takes a sudden twist when Henry is bestowed with an extraordinary power, the mighty system, granting him unparalleled strength and potential. The tale begins with Henry's family celebrating his 18th birthday, a joyous occasion filled with laughter and merriment. Just as he was about to make his birthday wish, however, their peaceful evening was abruptly shattered by a colossal monster's sudden attack on their apartment building. In a nightmarish frenzy, Henry watched helplessly as his loved ones perished before his very eyes, their final screams echoing through his mind. He trembled and screamed in terror, unable to comprehend the overwhelming horror of the situation. As he awoke, drenched in sweat, he realized with a jolt that it had all been a vivid dream. His rude behavior at school drew the piercing gaze of his professor, who sent him out to the hallway, but that was the least of his worries. For years, Henry had been stuck at level 3, unable to find a way to break through the barrier and level up. After school, he was accosted by a group of students led by Richard, a brutish fellow boasting a level 5 status. They taunted and bullied him relentlessly, goading him into a fight. Henry tried to stand his ground but was swiftly struck in the stomach and shoved to the ground, humiliated and defeated. Just as all seemed lost, a girl clad in a flowing skirt appeared out of nowhere, her lithe form executing a flawless fly kick that sent Richard flying several meters away. The other students scattered in fear at the arrival of the enigmatic Fiona, but not before hurling a few final taunts and jibes at Henry. Fiona was a remarkable figure. Despite her young age of only 16, she had already achieved a level 7. As if that wasn't enough, she had even single-handedly defeated a level 10 monster with ease. And turning to her older brother, she offered words of comfort and encouragement. As soon as Fiona appeared on the scene, Henry breathed a sigh of relief and tapped her on the head with gratefulness, reassured that he was fine. The sun began to set as they made their way back home, the light casting a golden glow upon their figures as they carried a birthday cake to celebrate Henry's 18th birthday. But even in the midst of all the joy and revelry, the specter of his earlier nightmare still haunted him. As the night wore on and the party was over, and just about to rest, he was able to put the worries aside, his mind finally at rest. In a sudden and shocking turn of events, the very fabric of reality seemed to tear apart as a massive portal erupted from the wall, unleashing a monstrous spider into the once safe zone. Panic and confusion gripped the bystanders as they scrambled for safety, their minds racing with questions and fear. But for Henry and his family, there was no time for hesitation. The rare and elite-level spider had locked onto them with deadly intent. The level 10 father, a man of great courage and determination, knew that he had to act fast to protect his loved ones. With a fierce determination in his eyes, he urged his family to flee while he charged straight at the spider. His attacks proved futile against the giant foe. Undeterred, the mother followed in her husband's footsteps, but the giant spider is simply toying with them. Fiona summoned her bow, her heart pounding with both fear and determination, as she aimed it at the looming giant before her. But before she could even loose an arrow, the colossal beast struck her with a single devastating blow, sending her tumbling to the ground. As Fiona struggled to regain her footing, she saw her beloved brother Henry rush forward to face the monstrous spider. With incredible strength and courage, he grabbed the creature's massive leg with his bare hands, shouting at his sister to flee for safety. But even as he held on with all his might, the giant spider impaled him with its deadly fangs, sending crimson rivers of blood spilling out from his wounds. In his final moments, Henry stretched out his arms, his voice trembling with disbelief and regret. Why am I so weak? Why can't I level up?" he asked, his words filled with anguish and confusion. As he cried out in desperation, it was as if his plea had been heard by some divine force. A faint beeping sound rang out within his brain, drawing his attention to a screen that materialized before him. He watched as the screen displayed a message confirming that he had amassed enough experience to unlock the coveted All-King account system, and, to his astonishment, the system had randomly selected none other than the Crimson Flame Emperor. The giant spider showed no mercy as it blocked Fiona's path, her heart heavy with despair and her eyes brimming with tears. With steely resolve, she charged at the creature, ready to face her doom head-on. But just as she braced for impact, a thunderous cry rang out from behind her, urging her to move. As she turned, she saw a blinding flash of light pierce the darkness, followed by the unmistakable form of Henry. The air crackled with the energy of lightning and flames as he stood before the spider. In a show of sheer audacity, Henry summoned a towering flame sword and lunged toward the creature. The spider roared in fury at being bested by such a low-level opponent, but it was too late. With a single, mighty strike, Henry cleaved through the spider's defenses and dealt a devastating blow that left it reeling in agony. Despite his valiant efforts, Henry found himself unable to withstand the immense power coursing through his veins. As blood gushed from his wounds, he knew he was in dire straits. His HP was dangerously low. Yet even as he struggled to keep his footing, the giant spider lost interest in him and turned around and went to go look for higher-level players. As luck would have it, a squad of support team members arrived on the scene, their numbers bolstering the group's chances of victory against the spider. But the creature was not so easily defeated. It sneered at the squad, summoning its web to ensnare them in a matter of seconds. Despite their superior numbers, the squad found themselves immobilized. The giant spider, having absorbed the life energy of the entire support squad, surged forward, its power magnified by 3 whole levels. With newfound strength, it lunged at Henry, its eyes blazing with fury. Henry found himself in a massive struggle against the spider, the force of its attacks knocking him back into a nearby tree with a bone-crushing impact. The trunk of the tree splintered and cracked under the force of the blow, leaving Henry battered and bruised. As he lay there, his HP and energy both dangerously low, a surge of fiery energy coursed through Henry's veins, rekindling his fighting spirit and filling him with an unstoppable determination. With a roar of defiance, Henry rose to his feet, his eyes blazing with a fierce intensity. Memories of the endless taunts and ridicule he had endured over the past 3 years flooded his mind, fueling his rage and sharpening his focus. Summoning every last ounce of his strength, Henry raised his hands to the sky, drawing in a massive amount of energy. And then, with a single explosive burst, he unleashed the full fury of the flame storm upon the giant spider, obliterating it completely and leaving nothing but a smoking crater in its wake. As Henry received his rewards, a wave of agony and exhaustion overcame him, causing him to lose consciousness. However, in the midst of his pain, he was bestowed with a level 18 demon crystal, a generous amount of currency, a fortuitous lucky ring, and a plethora of valuable materials. To his surprise, the system then utilized 10,000 units of experience to restore Henry's battered body. As he regained his senses, Henry's consciousness was inexplicably transported to the system's dimension. There, he was able to examine his stats and inventory in detail, and standing by the imposing figure of a Crimson Flame Emperor. The system cordially welcomed Henry and imparted knowledge about the All-King account system, which required him to level up in order to unlock additional characters. The strength of these characters would be directly proportional to Henry's link level, spurring him to set a lofty goal of unlocking every character and assembling an unstoppable army. Upon receiving the additional 10,000 experience points, Henry made the shrewd decision to allocate them towards enhancing his link level. As a result, he found himself now sitting comfortably at link level 12, which was no mean feat. However, to his bewilderment, his real level remained stagnant at a mere level 3. As Henry was lost in thought, he was abruptly jolted back to reality by the sound of heated voices outside his hospital room. As he listened in, he was relieved to recognize the familiar tones of his mother and sister. Their conversation, however, was far from comforting. Apparently, the hospital fees had skyrocketed to a staggering $500,000, as a result of the specialized potion required to rid Henry and his father of the lethal venom that had been coursing through their bodies. The doctor warned that without this potion, both of them had no more than a week to live. As the terrible news of the exorbitant hospital bill and the imminent death of Henry and his father sank in, Fiona was overcome with a sense of helplessness, feeling as though they were facing an insurmountable challenge. Her mother attempted to console her, suggesting that they could sell their house to cover the costs. Suddenly, a plaintive cry interrupted their conversation, and to their amazement, it was Henry, standing upright and healthy despite his near-fatal injuries. The doctor, who had been keeping watch over Henry's unconscious body, was flabbergasted by the miraculous recovery. Henry confidently strode over to Fiona, tapping her gently on the shoulder as he comforted her. The doctor was still reeling from the shock, unable to comprehend how Henry had eliminated all traces of the venom from his body and healed completely. Ignoring the doctor's bewildered questions, Henry focused on the practical matter at hand, asking about the cost of hospitalization for just the 3 members of his family. The doctor informed him that it would still be a hefty sum of $300,000. Determined to save his family, Henry boldly approached the doctor, promising to gather the necessary funds within an hour. Though the doctor was skeptical, he recognized Henry's resolve and began treating his family members without delay. Outside the hospital, Henry knew that selling his precious level 18 demon crystal was his only chance to raise the required funds. However, he couldn't rely on the public auction house, as he needed to act quickly. Instead, he set his sights on the notorious underground black market located in the perilous 9th zone. Disguised in a black cloak, Henry made his way to the market, only to be stopped at the entrance by 2 bouncers who sneered at him and demanded he leaves. Undeterred, Henry stood his ground, but the bouncers turned aggressive. Suddenly a voice from behind the door commanded the bouncers to stop. The voice belonged to an elderly man, who was intrigued by Henry's persistence and curiosity about the item he was trying to sell. With a steady hand, Henry removed his cloak and revealed the rare and valuable demon crystal, causing the old man's eyes to widen in astonishment. Despite his surprise, he maintained his composure and invited Henry to follow him into the main hall. As Henry stepped into the main hall of the underground black market, he was struck by the eclectic mix of nightclub-alike environment. He couldn't help but stare at the voluptuous waitress with a giant booba who greeted him with a wink, and he felt a wave of unease wash over him as 2 drunken patrons approached him, taunting him for his lowly level 3 status. However, before things could escalate, one of the old man's bodyguards intervened, and the 2 patrons quickly backed down, cowed by the imposing figure. Within the opulent confines of the VIP room, Henry found himself greeted by Mr. Lee, the elderly man from the Huangjin Corporation, and Mr. Lee, who took the lead in negotiating. Though Mr. Lee initially offered a paltry sum of $100,000 for the rare demon crystal, claiming it was an exceptional offer, Henry knew the true value of the item to be no less than $200,000. Feeling cheated, he stood up to leave, only to be confronted by 2 hulking bodyguards blocking his path. Mr. Lee's mask of civility finally slipped, revealing his true nature as a ruthless and dangerous man, as he threatened Henry with dire consequences if he refused to accept his lowball offer. As if to add insult to injury, he tossed a wad of cash onto the table, as if to say, "Take it or suffer the consequences." As tensions reached a boiling point, a voice suddenly pierced the air with a cold sneer, laughing at Mr. Lee's feeble attempts to swindle a mere level 3 youngster. A towering figure, his face obscured by a sinister mask, strode into the room and dispatched Mr. Lee's bodyguards with ease, clearing a path for a young girl named Kira. A level 20 powerhouse from the illustrious Manhwa Corporation, Kira exuded an aura of confidence and power that left Mr. Lee visibly intimidated. Without missing a beat, she strode up to Henry and declared her deep interest in the crystal, offering a princely sum of $300,000. Mr. Lee scowled at the generous offer, but Kira merely scoffed, declaring that she is rich unlike Mr. Lee and the Huangjin Corporation who sought to exploit and rob a mere level 3 youngster. To her, the additional $100,000 was a small price to pay for the opportunity to humiliate the Huangjin Corporation beneath her heel. Knowing better than to cross Kira, Mr. Lee made a hasty exit from the room, seething with anger. Henry couldn't help but recall the rumors he had heard about the bitter feud between the Manhwa and Huangjin corporations, but seeing it play out in front of him was a whole other experience. Expressing his gratitude to Kira for her intervention, Henry inquired if she might be interested in any other items. Kira, however, simply shook her head, unconcerned about Henry, as all she wanted is to humiliate the Huangjin Corporation. With a dismissive wave of her hand, she ordered one of her masked subordinates to hand over the cash to Henry, paying no mind to the rare demon crystal she had just acquired. Henry couldn't help but marvel at her unique personality, but he was nonetheless grateful for her help. As the family gathered around their father's hospital bed, concern etched deeply into their faces, the air was thick with tension. Suddenly, the door burst open, and a burly, bald-headed man stormed into the room, bellowing at the top of his lungs. He demanded that the doctor kick the family out of the hospital since they were unable to pay their mounting medical bills. Despite the doctor's attempts to grant them more time, the director was having none of it, insisting that they be immediately escorted from the premises. The doctor tried to explain that Henry was out gathering money, but the director sneered in disbelief, convinced that a mere level 3 could never come up with the exorbitant sum of 300,000, followed by a slap on the doctor's face. As he strode menacingly toward the hospital bed, enraged by her plea, the director lashed out and delivered a brutal punch that sent Fiona tumbling to the ground. Just as he was about to pull the plug on their father's life support, Henry kicked open the door and arrived. The bald director glowered menacingly at Henry, his beefy hand gripping tightly onto the young man's collar. In a fit of rage, he demanded that Henry compensate him for the damage he had caused to his door. But Henry, his eyes smoldering with fury, looked down at the director with an unyielding glare. He could feel the anger boiling within him, fueled by the director's brutal treatment of his family. At that moment, a searing pain engulfed the director's palm, spreading like wildfire throughout his entire hand. He howled in agony as he stumbled backward. The bald man frantically ran down the hallway, screaming for help as the pain consumed him. Although Henry knew that the director held the power to evict his family from the hospital, he couldn't bear the thought of his family being subjected to any further harm. Without delay, Henry offered to compensate the director with an additional 10,000 for burning his hands. The doctor, pleased to see someone stand up against the director's tyranny, engaged in a brief conversation with Henry. Henry then handed the doctor a bank card loaded with 310,000. Henry inquired if the amount would suffice, to which the doctor reassured him. Before departing, Henry thanked the doctor once more for granting him the extra hour. With a smirk, the doctor replied that he was merely doing his job. Fiona was consumed with regret, berating herself for her lack of power in defending her parents. As she trembled with guilt, Henry placed a gentle hand on her silky hair, offering words of comfort. Despite feeling downtrodden and unable to participate in the upcoming dungeon competition due to the lingering venom in her body, Fiona's spirits lifted as Henry excitedly grasped her shoulder, assuring her that he would bring home the coveted prize pool. The following day, a sea of people amassed outside the colossal stadium, eagerly awaiting the commencement of the annual dungeon competition. The atmosphere was electric, abuzz with anticipation and excitement as the principal took to the podium to make the momentous announcement. Amidst thunderous applause, the principal revealed that the basic prize pool for the competition had been set at a staggering 500,000, with the promise of additional increments based on the completion rate, no threshold in sight. To further intensify the frenzy, the principal also disclosed the much-awaited sponsorship for the competition, Manhwa Corporation, and introduced Kira, their representative. As Kira stepped onto the stage, her statuesque figure elicited a cacophony of roars from the male students. Her mere presence seemed to ignite an insatiable flame of desire within them, as they craned their necks for a better look. However, the principal was not done with his revelations, for he had one final bombshell to drop. He announced that the ultimate winner of the competition would be granted direct entry into the illustrious clan under Manhwa Corporation. The crowd erupted in an uproar, as the clan is one of the top 10 clans around. The principal then unveiled the coveted dungeon for this year's competition, the ominous Shadowy Forest, a level 10 dungeon considered the pinnacle of difficulty within the school. Legend had it that no one had ever emerged victorious from this harrowing dungeon. The Shadowy Forest was notoriously challenging, with an average level requirement of 10, a staggering distance from the average level of the students, which hovered around level 5. To further complicate matters, the mode for the competition had been set to PvP and PvE, allowing students to engage in battle with one another and granting a tantalizing glimpse into the cutthroat world of combat. To increase their chances of survival, students were permitted to form parties of up to 5 members. As the students hastily assembled into groups, Henry remained resolute in his decision to embark on the perilous journey alone. His conviction to undertake the daunting task solo was met with apprehension from the teacher, who expressed deep concerns about the dangers. Before the teacher could voice his opinion further, Richard, a notorious bully, sneered at Henry's decision. Mocking him for his arrogance along with his gang of thugs, Richard picked on Henry, taunting him to grovel on the ground and act like a dog in exchange for their acceptance into their party. Undaunted by their juvenile antics, Henry wore a wry smile and asked Richard how a dog barked. Richard, taken aback by Henry's unexpected response, demonstrated a perfect bark. Richard realized that he had been outsmarted and publicly humiliated. Enraged, he lunged toward Henry, his fists flailing wildly. However, his assault was quickly intercepted by the vigilant teacher. Undeterred by the incident, Henry set out on his maiden dungeon adventure with unbridled enthusiasm. Without wasting any time, he made quick work of the low-level mobs and pushed deeper into the dungeon, following the trail of the menacing spiders that roamed within. Eventually, his search led him to a tangled crimson web, ensnaring a young girl in its sticky grasp. It was none other than Tiana, a level 5 healer whose plight had caught Henry's attention. Despite her relief at seeing someone come to her rescue, Tiana was taken aback by the sight of Fiona's brother, who was only at level 3. Worried for his safety, she pleaded with Henry to flee, as the danger within the dungeon was too great for him to handle. With unwavering determination, Henry stood his ground, refusing to abandon his beloved sister's dear friend, Tiana. Henry called upon the power of the Crimson Flame Emperor, unleashing a burst of scorching heat that melted the strands and freed Tiana. As they fled the burning wreckage of the web, the level 8 formidable Red Widow spider had its eyes blazed with fury, spewing a barrage of venomous projectiles at the pair. Tiana and Henry deftly evaded the deadly onslaught, yet the spider was not to be outdone, quickly ensnaring the two in another sticky trap, binding them together tightly. As the massive spider lumbered off in search of fresh prey, Tiana and Henry found themselves ensnared once more. With no escape in sight, Henry frantically searched for a solution, knowing that the Red Widow spider had a penchant for using human bodies as incubators for its eggs. Tiana was overcome with terror at the thought of being used as a host for the spider's offspring, struggling to break free from the sticky strands. However, her frenzied movements only served to tighten the web even further, leaving Henry with no choice but to take matters into his own hands. Knowing that using the Crimson Flame Emperor's ability may injure Tiana, this gives Henry no choice but lay his head between Tiana's large pair. No choice but to use his teeth to gnaw through the webbing before it hardened. As he worked, Tiana emitted a series of peculiar noises, causing Henry to wince in discomfort. In a bid to stave off the awkwardness, Henry invited Tiana to assist him, and after a few confusing moments, they finally managed to free themselves from the spider's clutches. As Tiana and Henry celebrated their newfound freedom, their jubilation was short-lived as the Red Widow spider returned, more ferocious and vengeful than ever before. Undaunted, Henry called forth the power of the Crimson Flame Emperor, steeling himself for the battle ahead. With lightning-fast reflexes, Henry dodged the spider's initial assault, his eyes locked on his formidable foe. Gripping his sword tightly, he leaped into the air, his body moving with the grace and precision of a seasoned warrior. With a single, decisive strike, he cleaved the spider in two, its once terrifying presence reduced to nothing more than a lifeless husk. Henry was rewarded with a bountiful sum of 1,000 points and 5,000 experience. Tiana, though she had contributed little, was still granted 500 points for her assistance, her eyes wide with curiosity as she circled around her new companion, begging him to carry her on his back. As Henry collected his well-deserved trophy from the slain spider, his heart leaped with joy as he uncovered a rare and precious piece of equipment, its properties allowing him to inflict negative debuffs upon his foes. To his surprise, the item underwent a sudden and dramatic upgrade, transforming from an uncommon to rare quality. Henry soon remembered the lucky ring he had acquired from the fearsome level 18 spider, a legendary piece of equipment that granted him a chance to increase the quality of dropped items. As Tiana clung to Henry's arm, the pair pressed ever deeper into the twisting forest. Suddenly, Their journey was rudely interrupted by a group of unsavory characters, who had initially used Tiana as bait to lure the Red Widow spider into their grasp, only to flee like cowards when the battle turned against them. The leader of this motley crew was none other than Li Yong. With no remorse for his cowardly actions, he and his cronies turned their attention to the charred remains of the Red Widow spider, Tiana revealing that it was Henry who had vanquished the fearsome creature. To their amusement, the group erupted in laughter, sneering and ridiculing Henry, clearly not believing Tiana's words. As the group bickered amongst themselves, their words were suddenly drowned out by a monstrous roar that echoed through the dungeon. It was the unmistakable sound of the demonic tyrannical dinosaur, a fierce elite mob. Despite the danger, the group of cowards seemed positively thrilled at the prospect of hunting down such a formidable foe. Henry, however, knew better than to underestimate the beast. He warned the others of the potential danger, but his words fell on deaf ears. Ignoring his sage advice, they stumbled upon the demonic tyrannical dinosaur. They were shocked to find that the creature was already heavily wounded, its HP reduced to a mere 75%. Li Yong was insistent on fighting the beast and showing off for Tiana, but as they charged toward the enraged creature, they soon realized their grave mistake. The demonic tyrannical dinosaur was in a berserk rage, and their pitiful attack only served to further enrage the beast. In mere moments, the group was sent hurtling into the air by a powerful tail swipe, and one of their members was killed instantly. Li Yong darted through the dense underbrush, his heart racing with the pounding of his feet against the forest floor. The wild beast, with its snarling jaws and piercing eyes, had been on his tail for what seemed like hours. He needed a way out, and fast. He needed to transfer the beast onto another player, remembering that Henry and Tiana is nearby. As he rounded a bend, Li Yong spotted two figures in the distance. As he approached Henry and Tiana, the despicable man suddenly dashed behind and pushed Tiana towards the beast. Subconsciously, Tiana landed an attack on the beast, and although it only dealt 1 damage, it was enough for the beast to transfer its target from Li Yong to Tiana. Li Yong let out a wicked laugh as he utilized his unique abilities to disappear into thin air. However, his moment of triumph was short-lived, as Henry sensed his presence and managed to grab him by the neck before slamming him onto the ground. The impact of their collision caused the ground to shatter into a million pieces, and a circle of flames erupted around the enraged beast, momentarily trapping the beast. Witnessing the awe-inspiring power of Henry, the shameless man could not resist the temptation to solicit his aid in slaying the mighty beast. However, Henry's stoic expression remained unchanged, and he refused the man's offer with a dismissive wave of his hand. Undeterred, the shameless man fell to his knees, pathetically begging for the pair's assistance. Suddenly, the beast let out a thunderous roar, causing the very ground beneath them to shake. In the chaos, the shameless man saw his opportunity to strike. He drew his poisonous dagger and lunged at Henry with savage ferocity, hoping to catch him off guard. But Henry's keen perception and lightning-fast reflexes left no room for such treachery. Without hesitation, he blocked the attack with his sword, drove his weapon straight through Li Yong's heart. The protection system sprang into action, whisking Li Yong away from the treacherous dungeon. Henry's sharp mind immediately recognized the golden opportunity before him. Not only had he obtained Li Yong's coveted points, but he had also acquired his weapon and ability. However, he had little time to revel in his good fortune, as the fearsome beast was upon him in a flash. With lightning-fast reflexes, Henry struck the beast with a swift blow, his weapon glinting in the dim light of the dungeon. However, he knew that he could not let the beast perish while in its berserk mode. Doing so would deprive him of obtaining the rewards. In a calculated move, Henry ordered Tiana to prepare her to purify spell, ready to break the beast free from its berserk trance. Henry continued his assault, pummeling it with crushing blows and expertly executed throws. As the beast's health dwindled down to a mere 20%, Henry knew that the moment had arrived. He commanded Tiana to unleash her purifying spell. As Tiana spun her delicate staff in a mystical pattern and chanted an incantation, an aura of power surrounded her. The air crackled with energy as she summoned forth a radiant heart-shaped symbol, which pulsed with an ethereal light. With a graceful flourish, Tiana directed the heart towards the ferocious beast. And with a brilliant flash of light, the beast was restored to its senses. To the astonishment of Henry and Tiana, the once vicious beast was transformed before their eyes into Agumon, the lovable creature from the legendary Digimon series. With a sudden realization, Henry tensed his muscles, ready to strike the final blow upon the seemingly harmless creature. However, before he could do so, Tiana rushed forward, throwing herself in front of the creature and embracing it tightly. Her pleading eyes fixed upon Henry, she begged him to spare the little creature's life and allow her to adopt it as a pet. For a moment, Henry considered her request. Then suddenly said there must be a way to reimburse for his loss. The only way is to take all of Tiana's points while keeping the creature as a pet, what he called one stone two birds. Tiana hesitated for a second, she still valued points more, thus handing over the mini creature. The mini creature let out an innocent look, but Henry was not buying it, summoning his sword and thrust into the poor creature. As Henry absorbed the creature's energy, Tiana couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt and sorrow wash over her. She watched helplessly as Henry extracted every last bit of life from the poor creature, knowing that mercy was not an option in this world of survival. However, Tiana's brief sadness was soon replaced by elation as she received 2,500 points. Meanwhile, Henry went to check his system dimension and unlocked a powerful new skill called the Eye of Truth for his Crimson Flame Emperor. With this ability, he could see all living organisms within a certain radius. As Henry was just beginning to master his newfound skill, Tiana eagerly rushed ahead to inspect the loot. Much to their astonishment, Tiana uncovered a mysterious egg and beckoned for Henry to come to take a closer look. The egg's label was inscribed with enigmatic markings. The description said it can be hatched using experience or made into a delicious plate of egg fried rice, despite the unusual nature of the egg and its unconventional use. Henry recognized the egg as an exceedingly rare find. Together, they pondered what creature might emerge from its shell. Kira, who was diligently monitoring the entire event, was thoroughly impressed by Henry's exceptional performance. However, her fascination with the young man only deepened when the principal issued a decree that Henry was stuck at level 3 for more than 3 years, and he cannot level up. Kira was struck with curiosity and immediately ordered the principal to release the leaderboard, displaying everyone's rankings and positions. Despite the principal's concerns that this could result in additional complications on top of the already challenging circumstances, Kira was adamant in her desire to observe more of Henry's abilities. 날 보고 있으면 baby 너를 위한 melody yeah 네가 뮤지니까 잘 들어봐 play it